My son stood at the church altar and told me to leave my grandson's baptism. Everyone heard it. His wife smiled like she had just won the lottery. I picked up my purse, walked out with my head high, and made 3 phone calls that destroyed their perfect little world in 72 hours. Before we proceed, thank you for watching Granny's narrative. Please subscribe and tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. 3 days later, she was in handcuffs. My son was on his knees begging. But I was already gone. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 6 months before that baptism, I thought I had the perfect family. My son Michael had married this woman named Lisa. She was beautiful, young, always dressed like a magazine cover. When baby Ryan was born, I cried tears of joy. Finally, a grandchild to love and spoil. But perfection is usually just a lie wrapped in pretty paper. It started so small I almost missed it. Lisa would make comments about my cooking being too old-fashioned for Michael. She told me to call before visiting because they might be busy. Every family photo she posted online somehow never included me. I was always cropped out or missing entirely. When I mentioned it to Michael, he just shrugged. "Mom, you know how new mothers are. She is just protective. Give her time." So I gave her time. 6 whole months of walking on eggshells in my own son's house. I stopped baking my famous chocolate chip cookies and brought store-bought ones instead. I called 3 times before visiting. I pretended not to notice how Lisa's smile turned into a straight line whenever she saw me. The explosion came when they planned Ryan's baptism. I offered to help with the reception. Maybe make my apple pie that Michael had loved since he was 5 years old. The same pie I made for every birthday, every celebration, every moment that mattered in his life. Lisa's response was ice cold. "Oh, that is so sweet, Margaret, but we are keeping things professional. We hired a catering company. Professional catering for a church baptism reception." Red flags were waving so hard they could have caused a tornado. But I ignored them because I loved my son and wanted to believe in his happiness. The night before the baptism, I ironed my navy blue dress. The one my late husband Robert always said made my eyes sparkle. I polished my grandmother's pearl necklace. I even bought Ryan a silver baby cup from the jewelry store with his name engraved on it. Cost me $300, but he was worth every penny. I practiced holding him just right for photos. I wrote a little speech in case they asked family members to say something special. I was so excited I barely slept. What a complete fool I was. The morning of the baptism was sunny and perfect. I got to First Methodist Church 15 minutes early. The church looked beautiful with white roses everywhere and soft music playing. Friends and family were already filling the pews, everyone dressed up and smiling. I spotted Michael near the front holding baby Ryan. He looked so handsome in his dark suit. My heart swelled up so big I thought it might burst. For a moment I forgot about all the tension. This was my son. This was my grandson. This was family. "Margaret," I called softly, walking toward them with a gift box. That was when I saw Lisa's face change. She had been standing by the baptism fountain in this flowing white dress looking like an angel. But when she saw me approaching, her face twisted into something ugly. Pure rage flashed in her eyes for just a second before she hid it. She grabbed Michael's arm hard and whispered something sharp in his ear. I watched my son's face fall. He looked between his wife and me like a man trapped in a burning building with no way out. "Mom," he said quietly when I reached them. His eyes would not meet mine. "We need to talk." The gift box suddenly felt heavy as a brick in my hands. Around us, people were laughing and chatting. My sister Carol was waving at me from a pew up front where she had saved me a seat. Everything looked normal and happy except for the dark cloud forming over my son's head. "What is wrong, honey?" I asked. But I already knew. Something cold was spreading through my chest like ice water. Michael glanced at Lisa again. She gave him a tiny nod. The kind of nod that says, "Do it now or you will pay for it later." "Mom," he said barely above a whisper. We think maybe it would be better if you did not stay for the ceremony." The words hit me like a truck. Everything around me kept moving. Someone tested the microphone. The organ player warmed up. People kept talking and laughing. But my world had just stopped spinning. I do not understand, I said. Even though part of me understood perfectly. Michael struggled to find words. He kept looking at Lisa for help like a puppet waiting for someone to pull his strings. You have been difficult lately. The comments about the catering. Showing up last week without calling. The way you keep questioning Lisa's choices. Difficult. 6 months of biting my tongue until it bled. 6 months of walking on eggshells so thin they cut my feet. 6 months of swallowing my pride and my concerns. And I was difficult. Michael, I said carefully. I am his grandmother. I bought him a gift. This is my grandson's baptism. I know, but Lisa feels uncomfortable. This is supposed to be a peaceful spiritual moment for our family. Family. Not a family that included me. Their family. A family where I did not belong. The church went silent. I could feel every eye turning toward us. People stopped talking. My sister Carol was standing up looking worried. Everyone could sense something terrible was happening. Then Lisa stepped forward. Her voice carried just loud enough for nearby people to hear. Margaret, I hope you understand. This is Ryan's special day. We just want everything to be perfect and peaceful. Maybe it is best if you take some time to yourself. Take some time. Like I was crazy. Like I was having a breakdown instead of being thrown out of my own grandson's baptism in front of God and everyone I knew. The gift box slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a loud thud. The sound echoed through the quiet church like a gunshot. I looked at my son and waited. Waited for him to remember that I was his mother. Waited for him to defend me. Waited for him to show even a tiny bit of backbone. He just stood there holding my grandson and staring at his shoes. Something inside me died right then. But something else was born. Something hard and sharp and absolutely done with being treated like garbage. I bent down and picked up the gift box. My hands were steady even though my heart was breaking into a million pieces. When I stood up, I looked my son straight in the eye. Course, dear. I understand perfectly. The relief on Lisa's face was almost funny. She actually smiled thinking she had one. Michael looked surprised that I was being so calm. Maybe even disappointed. Did he want me to make a scene so he could feel better about what he was doing? Sorry to disappoint, but my mother raised me better than that. I will just say goodbye to Ryan, I said, reaching for my grandson. Lisa hesitated for a second, probably wondering if this was some kind of trick. But everyone was watching and she could not refuse to let a grandmother kiss her grandchild goodbye without looking like a complete monster. She nodded stiffly. I took Ryan in my arms. He was so warm and perfect with his father's dark hair and these incredible blue eyes. He made a soft cooing sound and grabbed at my pearl necklace with his tiny fingers. Goodbye, my sweet boy, I whispered against his soft head. Grandma loves you more than anything in this world. I handed him back to Michael, picked up that gift box, and walked out of First Methodist Church with my head held high and my heart shattered on the floor behind me. But here is what they did not know. What they could never have known. I had been expecting something like this for weeks. Being dismissed and underestimated is actually the best weapon you can have. People stop paying attention to what you are doing when they decide you do not matter. I had known Lisa was trouble from day one. The day Michael brought her home 3 years ago, something in my gut screamed danger. She was 30 then, beautiful in that expensive salon kind of way. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile that never reached her eyes. She laughed at all of Michael's jokes. She praised everything he did. She seemed crazy about him. I wanted to like her. I really tried. But little things kept bothering me. The way she would answer Michael's phone when I called and claim he was busy. How she changed the subject whenever I asked about her family or her past. The designer clothes and expensive jewelry that seemed way beyond what a dental receptionist should afford even with Michael's good salary as an engineer. I am old, but I am not stupid. I have been around long enough to know when something smells rotten. So I started paying attention. Really paying attention. During my visits I noticed things. Credit card statements left on the kitchen counter showing charges to places Michael said they never went. Phone calls Lisa took in another room speaking in hushed, urgent tones. A tan line on her ring finger that was wider than the wedding band she wore as Michael's wife. Then came the day that changed everything. I decided to surprise them with lunch. When I pulled up to their house, I saw a man leaving. Tall, well-dressed, driving a fancy black Mercedes with out-of-state plates. He looked angry and in a hurry. When I asked Michael about it later, he looked genuinely confused. What man? Lisa did not mention anyone stopping by. That was when I made a decision that probably saved my life and my son's life. I hired a private investigator. His name was Frank Martinez. Retired cop who specialized in background checks and cheating spouses. My neighbor's daughter had used him during her divorce and said he was the best. I feel ridiculous, I told him at our first meeting in a coffee shop downtown. Like some paranoid old woman who watches too many crime shows. Frank smiled kindly. Mrs. Parker, in my 30 years as a cop, I learned that a mother's instinct is better than any lie detector test. Tell me what concerns you. So I told him everything. The inconsistencies. The expensive lifestyle. The mysterious man. The way Lisa seemed to have no past before Michael. Frank listened and took notes in neat handwriting. Give me 2 weeks. Maybe less if she is as careless as she sounds. She was careless. Incredibly, arrogantly careless. 10 days later, Frank called me. Mrs. Parker, you need to sit down for this. Lisa Marie Santos is already married. Has been for 5 years to a man named David Santos in Los Angeles. Your son is living with a bigamist. My blood went cold. But there is more. More. How could there be more? She has been stealing from Michael. Bank records show regular transfers from his accounts to a bank in California. $1,500 every month for 2 years. When Michael asked about it, she told him it was for her sick mother's medical bills. And her mother, perfectly healthy, living in a paid-off house in Los Angeles courtesy of her daughter's marriage scam, felt sick. But Frank was not done. Mrs. Parker, this is the worst part. Baby Ryan is not Michael's son. The room started spinning. What? According to the birth certificate I obtained from California records, Ryan Santos was born 7 months ago to Lisa Santos and David Santos. The birth certificate Michael signed is a forgery. That baby he has been caring for as his own son is technically a kidnapped child. David Santos has been looking for his wife and son for 4 months. Ever since Lisa disappeared with the baby and $40,000 from their joint bank account. Could not breathe. Could not think. My grandson was not my grandson. My son's wife was not his wife. Everything was a lie. Mrs. Parker, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. What do I do? You call the police. And you call David Santos. That man has been living in hell for 4 months not knowing if his son is alive or dead. As I walked out of that church on baptism day with everyone staring at me, I had Frank's complete report in my purse. I had David Santos's phone number programmed into my phone. I had evidence of bigamy, theft, fraud, and kidnapping. Michael wanted me gone. Fine. But he was about to learn that some phone calls change absolutely everything. I got in my car and drove to the parking lot of the grocery store 2 blocks away. My hands were not shaking anymore. Anger has a way of making you calm and focused. I pulled out my phone and dialed the first number. The phone rang 3 times before a man answered. His voice sounded tired and broken. Hello. Hello, Mr. Santos. This is Margaret Parker. I believe I know where your wife and son are. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then a sound like a sob being choked back. Ryan. You know where Ryan is. And I know where your wife is too. God. Thank God. Is he okay? Is my son okay? The pain in his voice made my eyes burn with tears. He is safe. He is healthy and well cared for. But Mr. Santos, there are some things you need to know. I told him everything. About Michael. About the fake marriage. About how his wife had been living as Lisa Parker for 3 years. How she convinced my son that Ryan was his biological child. How she had been stealing money from Michael's accounts. $1,500 a month for 2 years, David said. His voice went hard. She cleaned out our savings and maxed out our credit cards before she left. I've been wondering how she survived. Your son is being baptized today. Right now actually. At First Methodist Church in Riverside. There will be a reception afterward in the church fellowship hall. I am in Los Angeles. I can be there in 2 hours. But Mrs. Parker, should I call the police first? You absolutely should. What your wife has done is not just bigamy and theft. It is kidnapping. You need everything documented properly. Who are you? Why are you helping me? I looked toward the church where my family was celebrating without me. I am Ryan's grandmother. Or I thought I was. Your wife has destroyed my family and stolen from my son. But mostly I am calling because that little boy deserves to be with his real father. Thank you, David whispered. I do not know how to thank you. Just get your son back. After I hung up, I made the second call. Riverside Police Department. I need to report a kidnapping, I told the dispatcher. 2 hours later, Detective Sarah Chan sat in my living room. She was about 40 with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking that I appreciated. Mrs. Parker, she said. Let me make sure I understand. Your son's wife has been living under a false identity for 3 years. She is married to another man in California. And the child your son believes is his biological son was actually kidnapped from her legal husband. That is correct. And you learned this through a private investigator. I handed her Frank's complete report. Everything is documented. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, bank records, photographs. Detective Chen flipped through the pages. Her expression grew more serious with each one. This is substantial evidence. True, we are looking at multiple felonies. Bigamy, identity theft, grand theft, parental kidnapping. It is all true. The child is currently at First Methodist Church. The baptism should be over by now. They are probably at the reception. Mrs. Parker, I have to ask. Why did you not come forward with this information earlier? That was a fair question. One I had asked myself 100 times. Because until today I hoped I was wrong. I hoped there was some explanation that would not destroy my son's life. And because I paused feeling the weight of my own truth. 'Cause I was afraid. I did not want to be the one to break his heart. What changed today? She had me thrown out of my grandson's baptism. Made my son choose between his wife and his mother. He chose her. So I stopped protecting people who were destroying us. Detective Chen nodded slowly. We will need to coordinate with Los Angeles police and possibly the FBI since this crosses state lines. The father is on his way. He should be here in about an hour. Mrs. Parker, your son is going to feel like his entire world is a lie. His entire world is a lie. She stood and tucked the report into her briefcase. We will start by questioning Lisa Santos. Is there any reason she might run if she suspects we are onto her? I thought about Lisa's smug smile as I left the church. Well, he thinks she won. She thinks I am just a bitter old woman causing trouble. She has no idea anyone knows the truth. But that gives us the advantage. After Detective Chen left, I sat on my back porch and watched the sun set. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle Robert and I had been saving for a special occasion. If this was not special, nothing was. Tomorrow would bring chaos and pain. Michael would hate me at first. He would feel betrayed and humiliated. The woman he loved had used him in the cruelest way possible. But tonight I felt something I had almost forgotten. Real actual peace. I turned off my phone and did not turn it back on until the next morning. When I finally powered it on, there were 23 missed calls and 51 text messages. Most from Michael. Each one more frantic than the last. Mom, where are you? People are asking about you. This is not funny. Call me back. Mom, something is wrong. Please call. I am coming over. The last text was from 4 hours ago. I looked out my front window. Michael's car was in my driveway. He was sitting on my front porch steps still wearing his suit from yesterday, but it looked slept in. His hair was a mess. His tie was gone. He had the hollow-eyed look of a man whose life had just exploded. Mom, he said when he saw me at the door. Thank God. Where have you been? Why did you not answer your phone? I looked at my son and saw exhaustion, confusion, and something I had not seen in months. Guilt. I turned my phone off. I said simply, "Would you like some coffee?" He followed me into the kitchen, moving carefully like the floor might collapse under him. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth." I poured coffee into 2 mugs and sat across from him at the kitchen table. The same table where I had helped him with homework 20 years ago. "Skaway, did you call the police on Lisa?" I reported a crime. Michael's hands shook as he picked up his coffee. "They arrested her last night. Right in front of everyone at the reception. FBI agents, Mom. They handcuffed my wife in front of my friends, my coworkers, everyone. She is not your wife, Michael. Do not." His voice cracked. "Just do not. Not yet." I waited while he struggled to find words. "They showed me documents," he finally said. "Marriage certificate from Los Angeles. Birth certificate with different names. Bank records showing money being transferred. They say she has been stealing from me for 2 years. She has been. And Ryan." His voice broke completely. "They say Ryan is not mine. They say his real father flew in from Los Angeles last night to take him." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I am sorry, sweetheart. I am so sorry. How long have you known?" "I have suspected for months. Got proof 2 weeks ago." Michael stared at me, trying to process this timeline. "You knew when you came to the baptism yesterday. You knew she was not really my wife and Ryan was not really my son, and you still came. Came because I love you. Because I wanted to see my grandson one more time before I stopped." "Before what?" "Before you learned the truth and lost him forever." Silence filled the kitchen. Heavy and painful. "She made me ask you to leave," Michael said quietly. "I did not want to, but she said if I did not support her she would take Ryan and move to California. She said you were trying to ruin our marriage. That you were jealous. And you believed her." "I loved her, Mom. Thought she loved me. I thought Ryan was my son." He looked up at me with eyes full of shame. "When you walked out of that church yesterday, do you know what I felt?" "What?" "Relief. Relief that it was over. That Lisa would be happy. That we could have a peaceful celebration." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And now I understand why you were asking questions about her past. Why you seemed worried about her expensive things. You were not being nosy. You were trying to protect me." I squeezed his hand. "I was trying to protect all of us. The man coming from Los Angeles. Ryan's real father. What is he like?" I thought about my brief phone conversation with David Santos. The desperation in his voice. "He is heartbroken. He has been looking for his son for 4 months. He filed police reports. Hired a detective. Spent everything trying to find them. Does he know about me? That I thought Ryan was mine. He knows. And Michael, he is grateful you took care of his son. He does not blame you. You are a victim too." Michael buried his face in his hands. "I have to give him back, do not I? I have to hand Ryan to a stranger and pretend the last 7 months did not happen. He is not a stranger, honey. He is Ryan's father." The doorbell rang. Through the window I saw a police car and Detective Chen walking up with a man I had never seen before. He was tall with dark hair and moved with the nervous energy of someone running on pure hope and fear. Even from a distance I could see Ryan's eyes in his face. "That is him," Michael said flatly. "That is Ryan's real father. Open the door." Detective Chen stepped forward. "Mrs. Parker, this is David Santos. He is here to see his son." David stepped forward. His voice was thick with emotion. "Mrs. Parker, I cannot thank you enough. You saved my boy. Where is he?" "Protective custody," Detective Chen said. "We took him last night while we sorted everything out. Mr. Santos provided DNA evidence, the original birth certificate, and medical records proving he is the father. Can I see him?" David's hands were shaking. "It has been 4 months. I just need to see him." "Course." Detective Chen looked at Michael. "Mr. Parker, would you like to come with us? We understand this is hard for you too." Michael stood slowly. His voice was barely audible. An hour later we stood in a Child Protective Services office watching David Santos hold his son for the first time in 4 months. Ryan recognized his father immediately. He reached for him with both arms and made happy babbling sounds that made everyone cry except Michael. Michael just stood there like a statue watching the baby he thought was his son bond with his real father. "He has grown so much," David whispered, kissing Ryan's head over and over. He looked at Michael with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. Thank you for taking care of him. I know none of this is your fault." Michael nodded stiffly. "He is a good baby. He sleeps through the night now. He likes those little puff snacks. The sweet potato flavor. He is starting to sit up on his own." "Would you," David hesitated. "Would you mind telling me more? I've missed so much." And right there in that sterile government office, my son spent an hour telling a stranger about every detail of Ryan's life. First smiles, favorite toys, bedtime routines, the way Ryan liked to grab at shadows on the wall. David listened to every single word. He asked gentle questions. He was clearly treasuring each detail about his son's stolen months. By the end, both men were crying. When we finally left, David Santos had his son back and Michael had nothing but an empty car seat and a broken heart. "Mom," Michael said as we stood in the parking lot, "I owe you an apology. For yesterday. For the last 6 months. For not trusting you. You do not owe me anything except honesty from now on. I do owe you something. I owe you respect. I owe you gratitude. I owe you recognition that you were protecting me when I was too stupid to see it." He hugged me then. Really hugged me for the first time since Lisa came into our lives. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we heal. Now we rebuild. Now we remember what family really means." 3 weeks later I was making dinner when the phone rang. Michael's name on the caller ID made me smile. That had become normal again. "Hey sweetheart. How are you holding up? Actually, that is why I am calling." His voice sounded stronger. More like the man I raised. "I wanted to thank you again. And I wanted to tell you something important." "What is it?" "I've been seeing a therapist. Dr. Rebecca Torres. She specializes in trauma and family stuff. And Mom, she helped me understand something I need you to know." I put down my spatula and gave him my full attention. "What is that?" "You did not just save me from Lisa. You showed me what real love looks like." My throat tightened. "Michael, you do not need to. Let me finish. When Lisa made me choose between you and her, I chose wrong. I chose the person manipulating me over the person who loved me my whole life. And when you found out the truth, you could have told me privately. Or let me figure it out myself. Or just walked away. I considered all of those things. But you made the hard choice. The choice that hurt in the short term but protected everyone long term. You called David Santos knowing it would destroy what I thought was my family. You did it because Ryan deserved his real father and I deserved the truth. I did it because I love you both. That is what Dr. Torres said. She said what you did was an act of love even though it looked like betrayal. She called it tough love with real consequences. Sounds like a smart therapist. Yes. And she helped me realize something else. I want to make things right between us. Really right. Not just apologize and move on. I want to rebuild our relationship on honest ground. I would like that. Good, because I have a proposal. Are you free Saturday afternoon? I think I can manage that. What did you have in mind? David Santos called me yesterday. He wants to meet with both of us. He is driving up from Los Angeles with Ryan. He asked if we would like to spend time together. I nearly dropped the phone. He wants to see us again. Mom, he considers you Ryan's grandmother. Not biologically but emotionally. You were there for Ryan's first 7 months. You bought him gifts. You held him. You loved him. David does not want that connection to disappear just because the truth came out. Tears started before I could stop them. I had been trying so hard not to think about Ryan. Not to miss those tiny hands. Not to wonder if he still liked being rocked to sleep. And me. I managed to ask. He wants Ryan to know you. He wants Ryan to grow up knowing all the people who loved him. Including the woman who saved him and the man who cared for him when his father could not. Saturday afternoon came bright and beautiful. I changed clothes 4 times before settling on a simple dress and my grandmother's pearls. Michael picked me up at 2 looking nervous but hopeful. You okay, Mom? Think so. This is just surreal, you know. Meeting my grandson's real father as my grandson's real father. I know exactly what you mean. We drove to Riverside Park where David suggested we meet. As we pulled into the parking lot, I saw them immediately. David was pushing a stroller along the path, pointing out ducks to Ryan. Even from far away you could see the bond between father and son. There they are, Michael said. He looks like a good father. He does. We walked toward them slowly. When David looked up and smiled, some of my nervousness melted away. Margaret, Michael. David waved us over. Thank you for coming. Ryan had grown in the 3 weeks since I last saw him. His hair was longer. His cheeks were fuller. He sat up straight in his stroller, looking alert and happy. When he saw Michael, he made excited babbling sounds and reached out with both arms. He remembers you, David said softly. He lifted Ryan and walked toward us. Michael's face crumpled as Ryan patted his cheeks and grabbed his hair with happy squeals. Hey buddy, Michael whispered. Look how big you are getting. Then David turned to me and I looked down into those blue eyes I had fallen in love with 7 months ago. Hi Ryan, I said gently. Do you remember Grandma Margaret? He stared at me for a moment. Then he smiled and reached for my pearl necklace just like he did at the baptism. My heart broke and healed at the same time. We spent 3 hours in that park. David told us about Ryan's life in Los Angeles. His family. His job as an architect. He showed us pictures of Ryan's room, his cousins, the daycare where he would go when David returned to work. We told David more stories about Ryan's time with us. The night he first slept through until morning. The way he giggled during diaper changes. How he learned to grab his toes. I want him to know these stories when he is older, David said. I want him to understand that even though his first months were complicated, he was surrounded by love. As the afternoon went on, something beautiful happened. We stopped being awkward strangers and became something else. An unusual but real family. David, I said as we prepared to leave. Would you mind if I stayed in touch? Maybe sent birthday cards and Christmas presents. Margaret, I was hoping you would ask. Ryan does not have grandparents on my side. They passed away before he was born. But he has a grandmother who loved him enough to save him. I want him to know that. Michael cleared his throat. And David, if you ever need anything. Babysitting when you are in town. Someone to talk to. Please call. I will. David's eyes were bright. And Michael, Lisa stole from both of us. She stole your time with someone who would have been like a son. She stole my time with my actual son. But she did not steal the love. That is still real even if the circumstances were not. Driving home, Michael and I were quiet for a long time. Mom, he finally said. I know this is weird, but I feel better now. Not healed. But better. Too. David is a good man. He is. Ryan is lucky to have him as a real father. And lucky to have had you as a temporary father when he needed one. That evening I called my sister Carol to tell her about the park visit. So you are staying in Ryan's life? She asked. Looks that way. And Michael is okay with it. More than okay. I think it helps him feel like his love for Ryan was not wasted. What about Lisa? When is her trial? Next month. David will testify. So will Michael. The prosecutor thinks she will plead guilty. But she deserves whatever she gets. I agreed, but honestly I had stopped thinking about Lisa weeks ago. My focus had shifted to rebuilding what she tried to destroy. Trust. Family. Love that was not based on lies. That night as I got ready for bed, I found the silver baby cup I bought for Ryan's baptism. The one with his name engraved on it. I had never given it to him. Had forgotten about it in all the chaos. Tomorrow I would wrap it up and send it to David with a note. Ryan might not understand now, but someday he would be old enough to hear the story of his complicated beginning and the grandmother who loved him enough to tell the truth. I placed the cup on my nightstand where I could see it in the morning. A reminder that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is also the hardest thing you can imagine. Outside my window the moon was bright and full. Everything looked peaceful. Normal. Exactly as it should be. But I knew now that appearances could be deadly. That love sometimes required courage more than comfort. And that family was not just about blood or marriage certificates or baptism ceremonies. Family was about showing up, telling the truth, protecting the people you love even when they could not see they needed protecting. Especially then. 2 months after that day in the park, I thought the worst was over. Lisa was in jail awaiting trial. Michael was healing with therapy. David had become part of our lives. I should have known stories like ours never end that simply. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. Detective Chen. She had never called me at home before. "Mrs. Parker," she said. "Something has come to light that you need to know about. Can you come to the station this afternoon? You might want to bring someone for support." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "I would rather explain in person." "Can you be here at 2? Called Michael immediately. He met me at the police station looking as worried as I felt. Detective Chen led us to a small conference room. Sitting at the table was a woman I did not recognize. She looked about my age with kind eyes and an air of deep sadness. "Mrs. Parker, Michael, this is Eleanor Rodriguez." Detective Chen gestured to the woman. Eleanor spoke quietly. "My son Miguel was married to Lisa Santos for 4 years. I thought she was wonderful until I started noticing things. Expensive purchases Miguel could not afford. Strange phone calls. A different personality when she thought no one was watching. My blood went cold. What happened to your son? He died 18 months ago." Eleanor's voice broke. "He fell down the stairs. Lisa said it was an accident. The police ruled it accidental death. But I never believed it." Detective Chen opened a file. "We have been investigating Lisa Santos's background more thoroughly. We found 3 other men across 2 states who were married to women matching her description and methods. All wealthy or comfortable. All had suspicious accidents or sudden illnesses after updating their life insurance." Michael grabbed my hand. "How many?" "At least 4 that we know of. Miguel Rodriguez is the only confirmed death. But we are exhuming another body next week. A man named Thomas Chen from San Diego who died of an apparent heart attack 2 years ago. His sister hired a private investigator who found the same patterns you found, Mrs. Parker." Felt sick. "You are saying Lisa is a serial killer. We are saying she is part of an organized fraud ring that may include murder." Detective Chen's expression was grave. "Mrs. Parker, we believe you were her next target. If you had not discovered the truth when you did, we think she was planning to eliminate you within the next few months." The room spun. "Eliminate me?" "We found a journal in her belongings. Detailed notes about your routine, your health, your medications. There were entries about creating opportunities for accidents." Michael made a choking sound beside me. "She was going to kill my mother." "We believe so. You were the biggest threat to her long-term plans with Michael. As long as you were alive and asking questions, she could never fully control the situation." Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand. "You are alive because you acted when you did. I waited too long. I kept quiet about my concerns. And now my son is dead. I'm so sorry," I whispered. "Do not be sorry. Be grateful. And be prepared." Detective Chen leaned forward. "Lisa's arraignment is next week. We need you to testify about everything. The fake identity, the kidnapping, a theft, and now the attempted murder conspiracy." Attempted murder. Michael's voice was hollow. "The journal entries are explicit enough to charge her with conspiracy to commit murder. Combined with the pattern from other victims, we have a strong case. But Mrs. Parker, I need to warn you. This is going to get ugly. Lisa's defense team will try to paint you as a jealous, vindictive mother-in-law who made everything up." "Let them try," I said. "I have the truth." Over the next few weeks I learned more about Lisa Santos than I ever wanted to know. Her real name was actually Lisa Marie Castellano. She came from a wealthy family in New York that disowned her after she was caught stealing from her own grandmother. She had been running marriage scams for almost 8 years. She would target men online or through carefully planned meetings, study them for months, create entire fake identities, marry them under false names, steal everything she could, then disappear. But in the last few years her methods had evolved. Instead of just disappearing, she started eliminating anyone who got too suspicious. Miguel Rodriguez had been her first confirmed murder victim. His mother Eleanor had started asking too many questions about Lisa's background. Miguel confronted Lisa about it. 2 days later he fell down the stairs and broke his neck. The police had ruled it accidental, but Eleanor never believed it. She hired her own investigator, but by the time he found anything useful, Lisa had already vanished with $40,000 from Miguel's life insurance. Thomas Chen was victim number 2. His sister had noticed the same red flags. Expensive lifestyle, mysterious past, controlling behavior. She convinced Thomas to hire a private investigator. Thomas told Lisa he was having doubts about their marriage. 3 weeks later, Thomas died of an apparent heart attack at age 36 with no history of heart problems. By the time the autopsy was done and suspicious chemicals were found in his system, Lisa was long gone. There were 2 other suspected victims, but the police had not been able to confirm anything yet. Men who died suddenly after marrying mysterious women who disappeared immediately after collecting insurance money. And then there was Michael. Me. According to the journal Detective Chan found, Lisa had been planning her exit strategy for months. She would have Michael increase his life insurance to $1 million. Then there would be a tragic accident. Car crash maybe. Or a fall like Miguel. Something that looked completely innocent. With me, the plan was more subtle. I was supposed to have a series of small accidents. A fall in my bathroom. A medication mix-up. Maybe a bad reaction to something I ate. Each one making me seem more frail and confused. Building a case that I was declining mentally and physically. Then one day I would have a final accident. And everyone would say, poor Margaret. She had been getting so weak and confused lately. At least she is at peace now. Reading those journal entries made my blood run cold. Every word was written in neat handwriting with dates and observations like a scientist documenting an experiment. Margaret Parker, 68 years old, widowed, potential inheritance approximately $1.2 million from late husband's life insurance and investments. Overly protective of son Michael. Suspicious by nature. Asks too many questions. Represents significant long-term threat to operation. Proposed timeline. 6 months to establish full control over Michael. 12 months to secure maximum financial benefit. 18 months to eliminate primary threat, Margaret, through staged accidents. 24 months to eliminate secondary target, Michael, and exit with full assets. She had our deaths planned out like a business transaction. The trial started on a cold Monday in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters and curious onlookers. This case had made national news. The beautiful con artist who married multiple men, stole their money, and possibly murdered at least 2 of them. I sat in the front row with Michael on one side and Eleanor Rodriguez on the other. David Santos sat behind us with Ryan, who was now almost a year old and babbling happily, oblivious to the serious events happening around him. When they brought Lisa into the courtroom, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect hair. She wore a plain orange jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. No jewelry. She looked small and ordinary. But when her eyes met mine across the courtroom, I saw the same cold calculation I had seen that day at the baptism. She was not sorry. She was not scared. She was just angry that she got caught. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Birth certificates proving Ryan was not Michael's child. Marriage certificates showing Lisa was still legally married to David Santos. Bank records showing systematic theft. The journal with detailed plans to murder me. Then came the testimony about Miguel Rodriguez and Thomas Chen. Autopsy reports. Timelines. Financial records. A pattern of behavior so clear and undeniable that even Lisa's expensive lawyers could not explain it away. Eleanor Rodriguez took the stand and told her story through tears. How she had loved Lisa like a daughter. How she welcomed her into their family. How she started noticing small inconsistencies and asked questions. How her son died 2 days after confronting Lisa about those questions. I remember the last thing Miguel said to me, Eleanor testified. He said, "Mom, I think you might be right about Lisa. I'm going to talk to her tonight and get some real answers." The next morning he was dead at the bottom of our stairs. And Lisa was crying and calling 911 saying it was a terrible accident. "Did you believe it was an accident?" the prosecutor asked. Well, Miguel was careful. He grew up in that house. He knew every inch of those stairs. And the police found traces of cooking oil on the third step. Just enough to make someone slip. What did Lisa say about the oil? She said she must have spilled some while cooking the night before and did not notice. And did you believe that? Eleanor looked directly at Lisa. Well, I did not believe that for 1 second. When it was my turn to testify, I told our story from beginning to end. The baptism, the investigation, the phone calls, the discovery of the truth. And finally, the journal entries that showed Lisa had been planning to kill me. "Mrs. Parker," the prosecutor asked, "why did you hire a private investigator?" "'Cause something felt wrong. I could not put my finger on it at first. But a mother knows. A mother always knows when something is threatening her child." "And what did you find?" "I found that my son was living with a woman who had stolen his identity, his money, and his heart. A woman who was raising another man's kidnapped child as if it were her own. A woman who was planning to murder me and then murder my son to collect insurance money." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "Mrs. Parker, how did it feel when your son asked you to leave the baptism?" I paused, letting myself remember that pain. It felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. But it also gave me clarity. It showed me that I could not wait anymore. I had to act immediately to save my son and that innocent baby. Lisa's defense attorney tried to paint me as a jealous, interfering mother-in-law during cross-examination. But every question he asked just gave me another opportunity to present the facts. The journal, the bank records, the pattern of dead husbands. By the third day of trial, even Lisa's lawyers looked defeated. The evidence was overwhelming. David Santos testified about the day his wife disappeared with their son. How he came home from work to find them gone. How $40,000 was missing from their bank account. How he filed police reports and hired investigators but found nothing for 4 months until he got my phone call. When I heard Mrs. Parker's voice, David said. When she told me she knew where my son was, I fell to my knees and thanked God. I had been living in hell not knowing if Ryan was alive or dead. "Mr. Santos," the prosecutor asked, "what do you think would have happened if Mrs. Parker had not made that call?" David looked at Lisa with pure hatred. "I think I never would have seen my son again. I think she would have kept him as part of her fake life with Michael. And when she was done using Michael, she would have killed him just like she killed Miguel Rodriguez. And my son would have grown up thinking a murderer was his mother." The defense rested without calling Lisa to testify. Smart move, since she would have been destroyed on cross-examination. Closing arguments took most of the 5th day. The prosecutor summarized the mountain of evidence. The defense argued reasonable doubt and tried to suggest I was a vindictive woman who fabricated everything out of spite. But you could see on the jury's faces that they did not believe it. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with their verdict. On the charge of kidnapping, guilty. On the charge of bigamy, guilty. On the charge of grand theft, guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Miguel Rodriguez, guilty. Lisa showed no emotion as each verdict was read. She just sat there staring straight ahead like she was already somewhere else in her mind. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led her away in handcuffs, Lisa looked at me one last time. "And you know what?" She smiled. A small cold smile that said she still thought she was smarter than everyone else. But she was not smart. She was just evil. And evil always loses in the end. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with questions and cameras. Michael held my hand and we pushed through to where David was waiting with Ryan. Ryan saw me and immediately reached out with both arms. "Ma," he said. One of his first words. My heart melted. "Hi, sweet boy," I said, taking him in my arms. "Grandma is here." David smiled. "He has been saying that all week. I think he remembers you from when you used to hold him." Michael ruffled Ryan's hair gently. "Hey buddy. You getting big and strong." Ryan babbled something that might have been high and grabbed Michael's finger. "This is my family now," I realized. Not the family I expected. Not the family I planned for. But family nonetheless. A family built on truth and love and sacrifice. A family that survived lies and evil and came out stronger. 3 months after the trial, I was planting flowers in my front yard when a car pulled up. A woman about 60 got out and walked toward me hesitantly. "Mrs. Parker?" she asked. "Yes. My name is Susan Chen. Thomas Chen was my brother." I stood up and wiped dirt from my hands. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I just wanted to thank you. If you had not exposed Lisa Santos, we never would have known what really happened to Thomas. We would have gone our whole lives thinking he just had a random heart attack." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "Now we know the truth. Now we can have justice for him. They are reopening his case. Based on evidence from Lisa's trial, they exhumed Thomas's body. They found the same chemicals that killed Miguel Rodriguez. Lisa is being charged with Thomas's murder too. I'm glad. I'm so glad he will have justice." Susan took my hand. "You saved lives, Mrs. Parker. Not just your son and that baby, but future victims. Who knows how many more men she would have killed if you had not stopped her." After Susan left, I sat on my porch and thought about that. About how one phone call changed everything. How refusing to be silenced saved not just my family but other families too. That evening Michael came over for dinner. We had started having weekly dinners together. Just the two of us reconnecting and rebuilding what Lisa had almost destroyed. Over roasted chicken and vegetables, Michael told me about his therapy session. "Dr. Torres says I am making real progress. I'm starting to forgive myself for being fooled." "You should forgive yourself. She was a professional con artist. Fooling people was literally her job." "No. But Mom, I should have trusted you. You raised me. You loved me my whole life. And I chose to believe a stranger over you. You chose to believe someone you loved. That is human. That is normal." Michael was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Course. Do you forgive me? For the baptism? For making you leave? For choosing her over you?" I looked at my son. The boy I raised. The man he had become. The person he was working hard to be. There is nothing to forgive. You were a victim too. And you came back. That is what matters. That weekend David drove up from Los Angeles with Ryan. We met at the same park where we had our first meeting after the trial. Ryan was walking now. Toddling around on unsteady legs and laughing at everything. He saw me and came running. Gemma. I scooped him up and covered his face with kisses. "Look at you. Walking and talking. He is growing so fast," David said. "Sometimes I look at him and cannot believe I almost lost him forever." Michael pushed Ryan on the swings while David and I sat on a bench and talked. "How are you doing really?" asked him. "Better. Some days are harder than others." I look at Ryan and think about all the months I missed. His first laugh. His first tooth. His first time rolling over. All stolen from me. But you have him now. You have all his future firsts. You do. And I have you and Michael to tell me about those early months. That helps more than you know. We watched Ryan squeal with delight as Michael pushed him higher. "Margaret, can I tell you something?" David asked. "Course. When I got your phone call that day, I was at rock bottom. I had exhausted every resource. Spent all my savings. I was starting to believe I would never see my son again. And then this grandmother I had never met called me out of the blue and gave me my son back. I just did what was right." "Well, you did what was hard. There is a difference. You could have stayed quiet. You could have let Michael keep believing Ryan was his son. You could have avoided all the pain and mess. But you chose truth over comfort. That takes real courage. I did it because I love them both. You know. And that is why Ryan will grow up knowing you as his grandmother. Because you earned that title through love and sacrifice. As the sun set over the park, we took a family photo. Me, Michael, David, and Ryan. For people brought together by lies but held together by truth. 6 months later, I got a letter from Eleanor Rodriguez. Dear Margaret, I am writing to tell you that they finally brought Miguel's case to trial. Thanks to the evidence from Lisa's first trial, they were able to prove that she murdered my son. She was convicted and given another life sentence. More importantly, I finally have closure. I finally know what happened to my boy. And I no longer have to wonder if I failed him by not pushing harder sooner. You showed me that a mother's instinct is never wrong. You showed me that speaking up, even when everyone thinks you are crazy, is the right thing to do. I am starting a foundation in Miguel's name to help families recognize the warning signs of romance scams and fraud. I would be honored if you would serve on the board. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for refusing to be silenced. With love and gratitude, Eleanor. I wrote back immediately and told her I would be honored to serve on the board. Over the next year, the foundation grew. We educated people about romance scams. We helped victims get resources. We worked with police to identify patterns and catch criminals before they could hurt more people. I shared our story at conferences and support groups. Every time I spoke, someone would come up to me afterward and say thank you. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for showing us that we are not crazy when we sense something is wrong. Thank you for proving that a mother's love can move mountains. Michael joined the foundation board too. He shared his story of being victimized and manipulated. He helped other victims understand that being fooled by a professional con artist was not a character flaw. One day we were setting up for a conference when a young woman approached us. She looked nervous but determined. Are you Margaret Parker? She asked. I saw you on the news 2 years ago. Your story saved my life. How so? My fiancé seemed perfect. Almost too perfect. But my mom kept saying something felt off. She could not explain it. Just mother's intuition. I was getting ready to tell her to back off and mind her own business. Then I saw your story. About how you trusted your instincts even when everyone thought you were wrong. What did you do? I hired a private investigator. Turns out my perfect fiancé was already married with 2 kids in another state. He was running the same scam Lisa Santos ran. Called the police. They arrested him. Turns out I was his 3rd victim. The first 2 women lost their life savings. The young woman started crying. If I had not seen your story, if I had not learned to trust my mother's instincts, I would have married him. I would have lost everything. Maybe even my life. I hugged her tight. Your mother's love saved you. I just showed you that mother's love is always worth listening to. That night I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and Robert's photo on the table beside me. We did good, Robert, I whispered to his picture. Our boy is okay. He is healing. He is strong. And we helped save other families too. I could almost hear his voice responding. I always knew you were tougher than you looked, Maggie. I am proud of you. The next morning was Sunday. Michael picked me up for church. Not First Methodist where the baptism disaster happened. We found a new church. Place with no bad memories. After the service we went to the park. David had driven up with Ryan the night before and they were already there waiting for us. Ryan was almost 2 now. Running and jumping and talking in full sentences. He saw us and came sprinting over. Gemma. Uncle Mikey. He crashed into us with the full force of toddler enthusiasm. Hey little man. Michael scooped him up and tossed him in the air. You getting heavy? Ryan giggled and squirmed. Want to play? We spread out a blanket and had a picnic lunch. Sandwiches and fruit and cookies I had baked that morning. My famous chocolate chip cookies that Michael had loved his whole life and that Ryan was now discovering with the same joy. David watched Ryan chase butterflies through the grass. You know, I used to be so angry. Angry at Lisa for stealing my son. Angry at the world for letting it happen. Angry at myself for not stopping her. That is natural. But somewhere along the way I stopped being angry. Because being angry meant focusing on what I lost. And I would rather focus on what I have. Have my son back. I have you and Michael in our lives. I have the chance to watch Ryan grow up. That is a gift. Michael nodded. Feel the same way. I lost months with Ryan. I lost money. I lost pride. But I gained something more valuable. I gained wisdom. I gained gratitude. I gained a real family based on truth instead of lies. We sat in comfortable silence watching Ryan play. This strange little family that trauma built but love sustained. That night after everyone left, I sat on my back porch watching the stars come out. I thought about everything that happened. Pain. The betrayal. The fear. The anger. But I also thought about the healing. The truth. The love. Family. If I could go back to that baptism day, would I change anything? Would I stay quiet to avoid the pain? No. Because staying quiet would have meant Michael marrying a murderer. It would have meant me dying in a staged accident. It would have meant Ryan growing up with a criminal. It would have meant future victims suffering and dying. Speaking up was hard. Speaking up brought pain. But speaking up saved lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Thank you, Mom. For everything. For never giving up on me. For trusting your instincts. For being brave when I was weak. Love you. Texted back. I love you too, son. Always and forever. Another text came in. This one from David. Ryan keeps asking when we can see Gamma again. How about next weekend? I smiled and typed back. Next weekend sounds perfect. As I got ready for bed that night, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a woman who had been knocked down but got back up. A woman who was told to be quiet but spoke up anyway. A woman who chose truth over comfort and love over fear. I saw a survivor, fighter, a grandmother, hero. But most of all, I saw a mother who loved her son enough to risk everything to save him. And that, I thought as I turned off the light, is what real love looks like. Years later, Ryan would ask me about that baptism day. About why there were no pictures of his first baptism. About why the story of his early life was so complicated. And I would tell him the truth. Age-appropriate and gentle, but the truth nonetheless. I would tell him about a woman who lied and a grandmother who refused to be silent. About a father who never stopped searching and an uncle who learned to forgive himself. About how sometimes families are born from trauma but held together by love. I would tell him that speaking the truth is not always easy, but it is always right. That trusting your instincts is not paranoia but wisdom. That loving someone sometimes means making hard choices that hurt in the moment but heal in the long run. And I would tell him that he is loved. By his father David, who moved heaven and earth to find him. By his uncle Michael, who cared for him when his father could not. By his grandmother Margaret, who loved him enough to risk everything to bring him home. Most of all, I would tell him that family is not just about blood. Family is about the people who show up. Who tell the truth. Who love you enough to make hard choices. Who fight for you even when you cannot fight for yourself. That is what I learned from this nightmare. That is what I would pass on to Ryan and to anyone else who needed to hear it. Love is not always easy. Family is not always simple. Truth is not always comfortable. But they are always worth fighting for. Always.